Welcome back to Tech Beyond Gender. I'm your host, Meena Satishkumar. Today, I have the privilege of talking to our guest, Jayshree Ravi, who is currently the head of strategy and architecture in Lagom. Jayshree has over 30 years of experience in the IT industry and the last 24 years being focused on architecting solutions in some of New Zealand's largest companies. Working in tech, it is hard to ignore underrepresentation of women in architecture and strategy roles. So can imagine the scene, how it would have been over 20 years ago. I'm very much looking forward to hearing her stories and her journey in NZ Tech. Welcome, Jayshree. Thank you for joining us today and taking time.
Thank you for the opportunity, Meena. I'm honored to be part of this session.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself, Jayshree, and share a bit about your current role and responsibilities in the tech industry?
So I'm Jayshree Ravi, and I'm the head of strategy and architecture at Lagom. So Lagom is a boutique consulting firm. I just joined there in February this year. That specializes in SAP and other ERP implementations. We do complex projects. We have a large range of clients, right from Auckland Council to restaurant brands. We're doing many projects. Anyway, so I've just started there in February as the head of strategy and architecture. So I specialize in SAP. So I've got about 25 years of experience in SAP, and I have worked on various projects in some of New Zealand's large companies. So that's where I am.
Cool. What inspired you to pursue a career in technology, and how did you navigate your path to a leadership position?
Okay. So when I did my bachelor's degree in physics and mathematics in Mumbai, India, I did Fortran programming and I really enjoyed that. Of course, I only had one time access to a system, a big mainframe system, but I enjoyed the logical thinking of programming. And then when I finished my master's, my first job was a management trainee in the EDP department of Voltas, which is part of a Tata group. And I did a lot of, I started off as a COBOL programmer, but because as the new kid on the block, when we got our first Unix machines in 1983, I got put onto that. The oldies didn't want to work on that. So they said, okay, here you go. So I had to learn Unix C. I mean, in those days, there was no internet and no Google. So it's all a book and trial and error. So I did a lot of projects, even writing device drivers, etc., in those days. And then I also dabbled in the precursor to DOS, which is an operating system called CPM, and learned DBase2. Then I learned VisiCalc, which is a precursor to spreadsheets, etc. I did a lot of work for stock exchange and other things, using that. And that I really enjoyed my career. Then after about 6 years, I moved to another location in New Bombay and I joined a Shell Mafatlal joint venture company as a senior systems analyst and then became the project leader for systems there. So I did again a lot of Unix, Oracle. I mean, I did a lot of work, right from programming to analysis to doing presentations to, leading a group of people. So I was kind of like the IT manager there and I had a large team there. So that in 96, when I came to New Zealand, I, of course, started at Datacom and quickly became the team leader for the open systems group, and then I've been in Fonterra and then IntelliGroup, which is now part of Accenture, and then Contact Energy, Z, Datacom, and now here. So I've been through the ranks and various positions. But mainly in the last 25 years, I've been doing a lot of SAP work.
Mhm. So how long were you working in India for?
I worked in India from about 1981, my first job, till 1996 when I came here. So I had quite a big, so about 14 years, 14 to 15 years in India.
Okay.
Yeah. And then from 96 onwards here. So long career, 40 years plus, and all in the IT. I've only ever worked in the IT industry. So that's all I know. But I've done different roles, and I've done networking, I've done programming, I've done database, I've been a DBA. So I've been through various roles. So that's why I enjoy being an architect, because you need to know, like they say, the definition of an architect is like a seagull. An architect is like a seagull. You fly, just a little bit over sea level, crapping all over the place. But if you need, you can deep dive down and get a fish. So I've been in various roles in IT, yeah, in leadership and architecture roles. But I enjoy architecture, designing something for a client.
Now that's a very interesting journey. Like you've just had like more than 40 years of experience in technology sector, right? So especially in India, how was it to begin your career? Like were there women with
Oh,
you
yeah.
working in technical roles? So that's
Correct. So, at Voltas, there were quite a few women, so I never felt out of place over there. And even when I joined, so I think there was, and we were very well respected. We were good colleagues. We had a good camaraderie in the office. So I never felt that, I'm a woman and I'm something different. Even when I joined NOSL, which is India's first petrochemical company, while it's an engineering company, so there are a lot of engineers, so a lot of males, but in the computer center, there were about six women there. So again, I never felt out of place. While a lot of the C-suite people were male, and many of them came from Holland, but I think the culture there in India, I've never felt out of place being a woman. And of course, being an Indian, I gelled in with the local population, so that was not a problem for me.
It's very interesting you say that with the number of many women being in the technology sector, right? I was
Hmm.
recently reading an article about how in the 1950s and 60s, right, there were loads of women in the
Hmm.
technology sector. And apparently in the 1970s is when they decided that they need to like make it a professional entity, the technology sector.
Hmm.
And that's when they decided to come up with defined, clear personality profiles of individuals working in the sector. And they came up with profiles matching men personality. All the
Hmm.
personality traits they were looking for were all clearly defined for
Hmm.
hiring men, even though
Hmm.
it was dominated by females prior to
Yeah, yeah.
1970s. And then past 1970s, then they started seeing a decline. This is more in the
Hmm.
US. They started seeing a decline in the number of women in the
Women
technical
and
roles,
yeah.
and it was more men who were taken into those technical roles.
Hmm.
And then they also decided, well, we need more men to manage other men. And they just decided for some reason that women can't
Hmm.
manage men. And so that's how the whole everything changed since. And I was just thinking when you were talking to me about the 1980s, where how there were many women, I was just wondering if the trend changed past 1980s in India, probably.
Yeah, they were. Men still were larger numbers than women, but there was, quite a good number of women, so you didn't feel that you're something separate or whatever. And even a few years back, I went to an office of Wipro, which is a very big Indian firm. They were our outsourced partner at Contact Energy. So I went to one of their locations, and I find so many girls and women there that I was really surprised. Not that surprised. It didn't really surprise me, but I felt good that I could see a lot of women there.
Nice.
This is in Pune, so I could see a lot of women there. So that was actually, and even a lot of women come over as offshore partners. Of course, not as many as men do because they come with their families, and that is a little limitation. So mostly they're young girls who come who are not married and have kids because they're more mobile, and it's a bit difficult to uproot your family, but. Otherwise, I see a lot of women coming across from these offshore organizations. So that actually was quite good. Yeah,
That's great.
very
So, which
pleasing.
year did you migrate to New Zealand?
In 1996, yeah.
Okay. Well, was your experience similar in New Zealand?
And no, actually, that was a bit of a shock to me. So I was job hunting, even though I had a lot of experience. So I went to one of the big fives for an interview, and I was actually, about 10 minutes into the interview, the interviewer actually told me, as a rule, I don't employ people from India. I don't employ Indians because they're very subservient. So I was a bit shocked, but I didn't know whether to, because it's just been like a fortnight in New Zealand, and I didn't know what to say because I didn't know how things worked here. So I just said, "Oh, thank you," and let's not progress this further. He tried to say, no, no, he sounded apologetic, but I said, it's not going to work out, is it? So, and then I walked out. And I even had a couple of job rejections, even though there was one I did a lot of work on a software, which is an asset management software. And that a New Zealand company was using the same software, and there are not many people in that. And I got rejected for that too. And I can only think it's either because I was a woman or a woman of color. I don't know. So I've had a couple of such opportunities. Still, I joined Datacom after about 2 months. I got a job in Radicom, and actually that was quite nice. I saw a lot of women, I saw a lot of Indians there, and other people of other, like a lot of Asians also. That was very good. So I was very happy. And after 6 months, I got promoted to a team lead. So managing the DBA and the infrastructure team essentially. So that was quite good. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
So you just touched on the challenge.
Mhm.
If you're comfortable enough, do you mind elaborating on some of the key challenges you faced as a woman of color in the tech industry, and how did you overcome them?
As a woman of color, the some of the initial things that I faced was, you're the in a big group of a meeting. There's like about 40 men. I've found that a couple of times, and then I'm the only woman there. And then initially, it used to be, in my early days, I used to find it a bit embarrassing or not. I didn't want to speak up, but then I thought, I'm as good as them, if you know what I mean. I shook myself mentally and I said, I'm in no way inferior, so I made myself heard. And especially when there were things that were said I didn't quite agree with. I stood up, and I suppose it's also my nature because when I was young, my father always encouraged me to speak up. I was the only child, and maybe I was the boy he never had or whatever, but I was never encouraged to be timid and be, lady like a girl, girl. Like, it was encouraged me to speak up. So I think it is also to do with personality. So in many such cases, I have found that while there are challenges, it is not in some places it's a bit more subtle. Like, you don't get included in certain, like coffee catch-ups or something like that, or certain conversations, because I think we are more comfortable with people from a similar background. So I can say that maybe the problem is with both sides. I think both people need to, both the people here and the women of color, or diverse people from diverse, or racially diverse cultures, they need to also make an effort to mingle with them. So it works both ways. So just to give, to be fair to both sides. But I do notice that there is a little, um, shall I say, that inclusive group. There's still the old boys network, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
And so to me, the one way of overcoming, at least the strategy that I used is be so good at your subject or your field that you can't be, yeah, ignored for that, if you know what I mean. So people respect you for what you are. People know they need you for what you are. So that was one of the things. The other lesson that I got taught by actually who's not an Indian, but who's a KV Pakera, who was my manager in Dadcom. What he told me is because I had a strong technical background, and even though I was a team lead, I was presenting a lot of technical papers and I was at conferences, etc. So he actually got sidelined when a new manager came in. Okay, and this guy is Pakeha. He's not a person of color or something. So he actually told me that Jayshree, I actually admire you. And I said, how? You've been my manager. You've been my mentor. Yeah, he was my first manager when I came to New Zealand. Very nice guy. But then he said, you know what? Take this lesson, learn this one lesson. Always be somebody who has got some technical or subject matter expertise. Don't become a pure manager. Because if you're a pure people manager, you can always be sidelined. You can always be, somebody else will come as your manager. They'll bring people that they know. It's very easy to get sidelined. But if you are a subject matter expert in whichever field you are, you can never be sidelined. Be good at that, become a subject matter expert. So I thought that was a very good advice, and I've been following that. So that is why I never aspired to be like a CIO or something. I know I could have easily become one. Few times I was offered roles. I could have easily done that, but I never aspired to be one because I thought then I will lose my. I've even faced at in one of my roles at Z Energy. I was the head of ERP and testing in RPA. So I found myself, because I was managing such a large team of people, that I found myself becoming only a people manager. So first of all, it wasn't very interesting because I like working on solution design and I like doing things. So one is from my perspective, it was, but then I then started noticing the politics at play, and especially if you're a woman of color. So that's why I moved out and I moved back into SAP where I have my technical focus.
Cool.
So that's my advice, yeah, how I overcame those challenges.
Yeah, there were two things which I thought what you said was quite interesting. One was about your example, like how during lunches you see Indians getting together or people from different cultures getting together, right? Now, what strategies did you take when it came for networking and stuff, right? Because I'm from India. And a lot of us don't drink alcohol, for instance, or
Mm-hmm,
we don't eat meat, and we have very strict
mm-hmm,
dietary requirements and
mm-hmm,
stuff. So going out socializing might be a challenge in some cases, and even the topics of discussions could be quite different and
mm-hmm.
varied. Your interest could be quite different. Uh,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one is one of my so I too, like yourself, I never drink or eat meat or something, but I don't go every Friday or something for because that's not me. I would rather, I mean, I don't mind working hard, or if I have to, I'll work late, but I also have a family, so I would rather spend time with my family. So one of my social shortcomings from my perspective is that I don't socialize enough. But what I try to do is when I mingle with people during morning teas or somebody's birthday or something, I actually go and talk to all kinds of people, whether what irrespective of their background and not necessarily Indians. I make it a point to talk to everyone else so that I feel I'm not singling out a certain, like just a certain culture or whatever. And especially if you're a manager, like at Z, I had a number of staff reporting to me, and it's very important that you are not perceived as, being in a very closed group of people. So it's important for you to socialize with everyone. And but I think a lot of people don't, I mean, respect you if you don't drink. I have never found that a problem because I've stuck to my orange juice or lemonade or something like that. And because I found many other people don't drink for whatever reason. So I have never come across that as an issue, or or even if I have to go somewhere, like especially now that I'm traveling quite a lot, I make sure that I go at least. I mean, I cannot insist going on to. I mean, I prefer going to a vegetarian restaurant, but we know that there's not that many in places in New Zealand. But as long as I get something vegetarian to eat, I'm fine. So I kind of, like as long as, the live and let live thing, like I don't care what you eat or drink, somebody else eats or drinks, but as long as, I am not forced into, or, no succumbing to peer pressure or something like that, just to fit in. No, I have my own principles. I wouldn't compromise on my principles just to fit in. So if you believe in that, people do respect you for that. They're defined.
Great. Now, you mentioned that as a woman of color, initial stages, you had certain
Mm-hmm,
challenges and stuff. So, and then you moved on to leadership positions.
mm-hmm,
Obviously, you've managed people from
mm-hmm,
diverse
mm-hmm,
cultures,
mm-hmm,
different genders.
mm-hmm.
How did you actually adopt any strategies when it came for networking and stuff? So, if you had to organize a networking event for your team, did you actually consciously make a decision thinking that, okay, I've got a diverse group of people here, how
Mm-hmm,
do I manage? What
mm-hmm.
strategies did you adopt?
So, from a networking perspective, like I told you, I made it a point to talk to everybody. But what I did was, in many places, we used to, as a group of people, we used to, especially in the SAP team, whether it was at Contact Energy or at Z Energy, whatever, we used to celebrate every culture's festivals, like Diwali when it came. So I used to be on the organizing committee for Diwali, and I would few times I have got I used to take about 20 saris and blouses from and all the jewelry, because people love to dress up. And many of the women would love to participate, and do that. And of course, we used to organize ethnic food days where people brought in, yeah, food of their. I mean, of course, they all know that, if you're vegetarian, I'm not going to eat something else, but some people would make it a point to even bring vegetarian food. So we used to have all these events, and we used to do, for example, the stuff quiz or whatever, you know what I mean, every day. So again, just try to mingle along, while you're celebrating your diversity, but also making sure that everyone gets a chance to participate in whatever they're good at. So yeah, so even we've organized some dances and all that. So that was actually quite good. So yeah, so I thought, so I think that way, once you get into the zone, at least I think the women kind of, then you form a bigger group. So we used to have yoga sessions once a week. We had a yoga teacher, the organization, like Contact, organized for that. So we used to all go into a room. Of course, there'll be mostly women there. Very few men used to come for yoga, but it was quite a diverse group of people and quite good. So yes, there are times when there is that subtle thing, but in general, I think, if you try to fit in, people do, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And one more thing you mentioned about, very briefly touched on your experience in Z, when you moved into more of a people management role, and then the politics came into picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think politics is a part of any scene.
Mm-hmm.
What was very different or challenging being a woman of color?
That is a good question. So Z energy itself, actually, I mean, I will say that very openly, is also encourages, diversity and inclusion. In fact, they even interviewed many people, like even myself, people from all positions, even from people from service stations, because there was all these racial attacks and all that about what we felt about that. So I think Z cultural diversity is they're very, very good at that. Okay. So when I mean by politics, I mean, I'm not, at one stage, I'm not very sure whether it is because I am a woman of color or is it just because I'm a woman. Sometimes you have this, it's not just women. As I said, there's these old boys network. And even I have found that even other, shall I say, Pakeha women have been excluded from that network. So there are times it has happened over there. But what I mean by political is that every person, and I'm sure, it will happen everywhere in every country, that people have their favorites. And if you don't see eye to eye with somebody, of your opinions differ, it's very hard to get along. So when I say politics, that's what I meant. I mean, it is possibly not targeted at women of color, but it is generally, I think, people's opinions. And if you have some people have a strong opinion, and it doesn't quite gel with others. I mean, and I'm not the kind of a person who's a yes person. I cannot work that way. So I have to, so I mean, if you can't change something that's above you, you have no choice but to. So I found when I got an opportunity, I left.
Hmm. So, how do you see the current state of diversity and inclusion in the tech industry? Have you noticed any significant changes or improvements in the last 20, 30
Mhm,
years?
mhm. I actually am very pleasantly surprised at the number of, whether it's men or women of different, cultures in various jobs. So, which I think is very good. But one of the things I also notice is that is happening more at a junior to middle level people. At the senior and leadership positions, I still don't see as many, say, women of color or even other people. There are, but it's very less. So I think there still needs to be work done. And I said maybe it's slow progress. I mean, at least there's some progress. So I can see. So, for example, at Lagom, where I work, there are even one of the co-owners of the company is an Indian from Fiji. So, so no problems over there. And we have a lot of people from from different countries, so which makes it a very interesting place to work for. So I don't see that as a problem. But I think at the senior level, I mean, I'm lucky that in my organization, we have an equal at the exec team level. We have 4 men and 4 women. So yeah, and out of that, 3 are Indians. Out of the 4 women, 3 women are Indians. So I mean, yeah. So that I think it happened to be so that is actually fantastic. But yeah, I think it needs to happen in other organizations. But maybe because it's a small organization, that's fine. But I think it needs to happen in other places.
Cool. So you've been in leadership roles for a wee while now. Have you
Mhm.
noticed any differences in the confidence levels displayed by women of color during the recruitment process compared to their peers? And if
Mhm.
so, what do you think would contribute to these differences?
Mhm. So, first thing is generally, women are not as, shall I say, aggressive as men when it comes during the recruitment phase. Okay. So, for example, and more so women of color. So, even first thing is, let me put it this way. So, if you have to, there are some hard salary negotiations. Men are more aggressive at that, whereas women tend to accept what they're given. And in saying that, I must tell you that I was very pleasantly surprised at Z Energy when I myself applied for the role of head of ERP. Okay. Um, Initially, they weren't offering me what I currently got. So, I mean, it just came to almost the same. But then my manager, who was a woman, she actually told me that, you know what, women normally, they're not like men, they don't ask. And I can see you're not very happy. So, you know what, I want you to send, because obviously she can't just give me a hike unless I ask for it. So she told me that, I need you to send me an email to say, please, I need this much for me to make the change. And she said, that's because I have noticed that women do not ask, they tend to take what they get. They don't negotiate as much. Okay, so I thought that was, and I find that even when I have interviewed and hired people, I have found that. So sometimes I have to make sure that I'm giving them the right. I'm sure they'd have come for less money, but I think I need to be fair and give them what their skill set demands. But the other thing I have noticed is that women of color, and especially new migrants, they are very shy. They don't communicate as much. So, what I have done is, first of all, make them comfortable during the interview and say, just, don't worry, just be yourself, talk about your skills, etc. So, I think somewhere there needs to be, so if it's people I know, so I have helped a lot of my friends and acquaintances in building up, establishing their career, help coach them for during interviews. I've even right down to looking at their CVs and helping them make sure that it is because the way you write a CV also makes a big difference, right? So I think from, I don't know, I mean, how people would do that, but when organizations or when people come here, they need, if there was an organization that helped them to promote themselves or project themselves the right way, according to the way, because also then the work culture or ethic in, say, in other countries is different to what is in New Zealand. So, I think that's something where people, would have the, hopefully an organization like yourself, Tech Beyond Gender, would, I'm happy to mentor people also in there, could offer advice on that area as to how to, make yourself, perceived and fit. And it's helped a lot of people, so many people still tell me, you know, about how I've helped them. And I feel glad that they settle down well in life.
That's really good. That's very good to know. Now, what is your leadership style like? And how do you foster a positive and inclusive work environment?
Um, I could possibly describe my leadership style as like a transformational leader. So I like encouraging. I mean, not only, of course, you need to make sure that the people, the employees, have the right tools and things available for them to grow in their career. But I need to. What I try to do is to make sure that I coach and mentor them very effectively. So one of the problems I find with people, coming from other countries is the communication. They know they're technically very good, but the communication is very poor. So I help them, talk about it. I help them. I kind of, try slowly to bring them out of their comfort zone. Talk at a meeting, present what they have done at a meeting, even at an internal meeting. So it's a small thing, a 5-minute session. So they build up that confidence to speak. And to me, those are things that I try to, like each person has their own issue. So, or things where they can, be helped. So I try to coach them on those points that they need help in. And so that, but my one message to all my staff or other people is that continue learning. The day you stop learning, is when your career kind of stagnates. Keep the interest. I mean, it's not just for women or men of color or whatever it is for. I would say advice for everybody. If tech industry changes so often, right? If you don't learn, you don't have that, interest to keep yourself up to date or, look at what's happening outside, then you tend to stagnate. So show your passion for that and then it will get recognized automatically. So that's
That's nice. What unique perspectives or advantages do you believe women of color bring to tech leadership roles?
mm, so for start, women of color come from different, I mean, I'm assuming that, people have lived and worked in other countries before they came to New Zealand. I mean, because, for example, I would say my kids are women of color, both my daughters, but I still think because they kind of grew up, they were born in India, though, because they kind of grew up here, I think they're kind of almost, I mean, apart from their color, obviously, they're almost, their outlook, their confidence, etc., would match any other, Kiwi, shall I put it that way. Whereas people who come later in life, and the later you come in life, it becomes their confidence is not as much, but they still bring a richness of, they bring their experience they've had in their countries, in other industries, and even with the dealing with other, different diverse group of people. So they bring that rich experience along with them. So one other thing that I have noticed, and even my own personal experience as well as others, is a lot of the tech, being in the tech area, a lot of the offshore ring happens in India, and I'm saying that because I'm an Indian. So a lot of offshoring happens in India, and even the offshore team in India generally, while they do deal with a lot of overseas clients, especially New Zealand, many of them the first time they're getting exposed to New Zealand, right? So they feel comfortable talking to. So we are kind of the conduit, the Indian in New Zealand is kind of the conduit between, say, the other, people, local people here and the offshore company. So because there's comfort on both sides, and I think that's where they can bring their, not only their emotional side and their not just their technical skills, if you know what I mean, but they can bring their EQ and they can build confidence, they can display confidence, and also help both parties in making the project a success. Because in I have dealt with a number of offshore, right from when it was at Fonterra's or at Contact Energy, Christchurch Council. Anyway, I've dealt with a number of offshore partners, and I feel that is a big strength that the people, especially women of color, can help with.
What are some common misconceptions or biases that women of color in tech leadership roles face, and how can they be addressed?
So one thing is people tend to think they can overlook you or bypass you, if you know what I mean. Because for some reason they think women and women of color, sorry, will be a bit more docile, will be, you know, they'll be a bit meek and they will not fight back. There's a perception. Okay. So, I mean, people have dealt with me when initially have been, shall I say, have been in for a rude shock when they know that here's somebody who can fight back. But I understand that not everyone can, the people of different times. So, one of the problems I find is that you tend to get overlooked, and especially if you are the kind who's shy, because they're shy, they don't know what to say. And till they've established themselves in New Zealand, they're a bit so they can tend to get disappointed and they tend to get overworked and underpaid, and if you know what I mean, and overlooked. Let me put it that way. So it's not very nice. So that is, I find that is one of the things that generally happens, especially if you're the timid kind and you don't fight back.
Oh. What emerging technologies or trends are you most excited about? And how do you see them impacting the industry in the next few years?
If you thought I'm going to say AI, the answer is no. I think there is AI is very much overhyped. Let me put it this way. And everywhere you go, like even in SAP, there's AI. I mean, in my own field, I'm saying, and everybody talks about AI. But I've not seen very practical use cases of it. There's some stuff there, but it's like people make it out to be a much bigger deal than what it is. Okay. Whereas what I actually think is the industry 4.0 or the machine interface, where commonplace things talks to, your systems. And, for example, things like, we already have smart meters and all that telling you about so many things, but things like that, the connected world, that I think will has a lot of potential that can be tapped into doing a lot more things, so yeah. And sometimes, we know the Gartner hype cycle, right? So there are technologies, and right now AI is riding that crest, but there are a number of other technologies that I think, need to get more popular and more established and people working on them. So to me, still data and data science is something that, it was riding a wave a little while ago, but it soon has got overshadowed. But, done properly, that has a good potential for people to see, look into their organizations, patterns in their organizations and other things. I also think business process, because I'm very hot on business process. So business process and metrics. So I worked with so many ERPs and so many big organizations. Very few people actually focus on measuring, the ROI of their systems. And have spent so many millions of dollars on whatever system, whether it's an ERP system or whatever you spend on. Are you actually moving with the times? Is it giving you what? So that I think the key process metrics still need a bit more push, and those are difficult to get. It's not as easy as asking, tell me something, which AI will answer, ChatGPT can answer. It's not as easy as that. So
How
that's what excites me.
cool. How do you stay current with the rapid advancements in technology?
Oh, it's very difficult. Don't get me started. So I'm in a way lucky that my kids are not young. They're all younger, so I can spend a little bit of time. So what I try to do is every night, just an hour before I go to bed, I look up things that I think I'm interested in. So one of the things is, even in my role as head of strategy and architecture, I need to look at in my field, especially what is happening, what new things are happening. So, for example, how can you make use of this new process automation that SAP has introduced, or test automation or whatever. This all these, and without spending, on another tool, because to me, I don't like, if people have already spent millions on an ERP, so make the best use of what is there. So I try to look into areas that I work in, and my area of expertise is supply chain logistics and utilities industry. So I try to see what tools are available, or what new features are available. So I kind of my first focus is on those things, and then I look into others. So I, just look at other magazines or LinkedIn or whatever, follow a few people just to see what's happening. So it is a bit difficult, I know, but yeah, and I could definitely be doing more than I am. But apart from just technology, I also look at Sanskrit. So I am the president of Samskrita Bharati New Zealand, so which is a not-for-profit organization that promotes learning of Sanskrit everywhere. So because Sanskrit is a mother of Indo-European languages, and a lot of our religious scriptures are in Sanskrit. So for the last many years, I didn't have the privilege of learning it in school. So since I've been in New Zealand, a few of us have been doing self-study, then we've been part of Samskrita Bharati. So I try to give back to the community by teaching beginners classes and trying to write some blogs and that and promote use of that. So
Well, I remember this must have been what, like for over 15 years ago. I think I started with you in Wellington,
we
one of the
had some initial
Sanskrit classes.
success. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's
yeah,
still
yeah.
going. Yeah, I'm
Wow,
still
that's
pursuing.
amazing. Now you've got to a stage where you are teaching others
Yeah,
Sanskrit.
I
And
was
I,
learning. I was a learner and beginner. Yeah, so we have did now the four levels of Sanskrit Bharati and then trying to
wow,
teach now. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
amazing.
Not enough time in the day, so I try to do my best. So juggling too many balls, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What advice would you give to young women of color aspiring to enter the tech industry and eventually move into leadership roles?
So, okay, what advice would I give? So, first thing is always never be afraid to be who you are. Okay, so never be, many people try to become westernized. So don't when I first came to New Zealand, I met a lot of dairy owners. And they've been there many years ago. Many of them tried to westernize their names so that it's easier for. And I know, like even my name Jayshree is a bit of a mouthful, but make sure that people say my full name. I don't try to shorten it and say, call me Jay or something like that. I say, try to. So one is never be afraid of your background or who you are. But my most important thing is be really good at whatever subject area of technology you want to be in. And then build up that confidence. If you're good at something, you will be confident in speaking about it. And so that's how, so build up not only your knowledge, but technical knowledge, but also your communication skills. So, and I think, if you have those two things, your communication and knowledge, there's nothing preventing you from, rising up and making a name for yourself.
Yeah, I'm looking at the dot in your forehead and between your eyebrows.
Hmm.
So you obviously wear the bindi every day to work.
Not every day. Sometimes when I wear Indian clothes, I wear the bindi. So
Okay,
when I wear Western clothes, I think I go with the Western trend. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now looking back at your career, what are you very proud of, and what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
I'm very proud of the work I did at Fonterra. So I joined Fonterra as a functional consultant when they had Oracle, the dairy board, but they had the e-business, Oracle e-business suite. When Fonterra was formed, I was part of this digital transformation group, and I helped them select SAP, and they had a big digital transformation program. So I was their first architect. So I traveled a lot internationally for that, in various roles, and I'm very proud of that. I, in fact, developed my liking and expertise in supply chain and logistics because of the work I did at Fonterra. So that's something I'm still very proud of, And yeah, I mean, that's what got my love of supply chain so much so that I did a second master's in supply chain and logistics from Messi after I finished with Pantera. So just to get some qualifications in that field.
Wow, how do you manage? How do you find time for constantly learning, not just technology, another master's degree,
This was
Sanskrit,
a while
and
ago. Yeah.
also two daughters at home while they were growing up? How did you
This,
balance everything?
yeah, it was a bit difficult. You have to juggle a lot of balls in the air. I didn't aspire to be while I enjoyed my career and I wanted to do something that I enjoy, I didn't aspire to be a C-suite somebody or the other because I know that career and that. But I had a very supportive, my husband's been very supportive. And my parents, when they were here, of course, my father's no more, and my mother's now nearby. She's got very severe dementia, so she's in a home. She doesn't even recognize me, but she did. I relied a lot on them also to look after my family, so that I wasn't totally leaving, them. But it is a bit difficult, and it is hard, and you have to make some compromises along the way, and yeah. So there were times when my kids were young, I used to think, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Especially when Fonterra moved from Wellington to Auckland. For about 2.5 years, I used to go on a Monday. Now you have all these work from home and all that other stuff, right? I used to go on a Monday to either Auckland or Hamilton and come back on a Thursday night. So I was away for, almost 3 to 4 nights. And that was quite hard on me, and I used to think, am I even doing the right thing? I used to feel very guilty. So there is that guilt. But then, I mean, when my kids grew up, yeah, initially even my younger daughter will say, "Why can't you be a stay-at-home mom and pick me up from school like other moms do, or come and volunteer or help at the school?" Which I just couldn't, right, because of my workload. But then I think, so it used to make me feel very guilty. But when now they say, "Oh, we're very proud of you. You've led an example." At least I feel happy that, all that, the years that I felt guilty was not a waste. So yeah, it's a hard question of juggling. And of course, it depends on the support you have. So I had a very supportive husband who helped me a lot.
It was a beautiful conversation, Jayshree. I really enjoyed talking to you about your varied experience, and just hats off to all your hard work and the knowledge that you have, not just technically, it's also learning a completely new, different language and now being in a position to teach that language to others is completely a different level. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, thank you. But I enjoyed it. That's why I wanted to. It's always been a passion. I think if you have a passion for something, you can make it work.
Yeah, that's a really key message, I think. Being passionate about what you're doing
Mm.
is the key. Is there any other topic or issue you'd like to discuss that we haven't covered yet?
Mhm. No, not really. Like I said, it's a passion, and I feel that even that's what I tell even my kids. Whatever it is, don't lose out on the passion, because the moment you've lost that, it is, then it becomes everything becomes a drudgery. But if you have a passion for something, you learn something new every day that keeps you going, and sometimes, keeps you. Otherwise, then life becomes monotonous and other.
Hmm. Thank you, Jayshree. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're traveling a lot still with work, and thanks for
Yeah.
making time for this conversation. I really, really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking to you here. Thank you.